let's go up next to our only audio question of the month. And this comes to us from Sal in California.
Hey, John and Wei, this is Sal from California. I have a question for you guys regarding AEW. So with the attendance and the ratings on the decline over the last year, I'm just wondering for you as fans, what do you think has led to kind of your own decrease of interest in the product, if there has been one for you? I have been an AEW watcher from the beginning. I started, with the first pay-per-view with Dynamite, and that's how I found your podcast, was looking for a Dynamite review podcast. And while I still really enjoy the product, I think for me, kind of the CM Punk flame out was a big turning point. And also the addition of Collision kind of started to get me in the habit of skipping shows, because I would skip Rampage and Collision. And then that led to me sometimes skimming Dynamite as well. I never missed the pay-per-views because those are always great, but I think it's just too much for me personally sometimes. So I'm just curious to hear from your perspective over the last year. What has changed for you that has made AEW a little bit less enjoyable? And do you think there's anything that they can do to kind of turn the corner for you?
Thank you, Sal.
Thank you to Sal for the question. Why don't you start? Are there big items that...
This is sort of $1 million question that we, in some form, try to answer for ourselves every single month. Now, to answer it, we first have to acknowledge and maybe agree on the fact that we might both be actually experiencing some form of AEW fatigue. Do you feel that? Do you feel that for yourself?
AEW fatigue. I'll say that I still feel, of all the shows, like, what are the ones that I genuinely tend to look forward to each week? Like, on a Wednesday, Wednesday is a super busy day for me, but I'm genuinely like, I look forward to Dynamite most weeks. Like, I still look forward to that. I think I would have Collision. To me is, number one, it's a really tough night for me to try and set aside 2 hours, and I'm trying most weekends to carve out those 2 hours or 90 minutes to watch Collision each weekend. I think there's something to that. The addition of Collision, it's made it as though it's just more product to follow. It's a lot on many people's weekly schedule. And as Sal mentioned, I think once you introduce kind of a breaking point for some people where they skip one show and they realize that, okay, I missed this and I'm not too out of the loop, it's tougher to get back into that. Circling back to another question, like, once I got out of the habit of watching F1 every Sunday, that became the habit. And it's that much harder to get it back in. And you can tell me this is absolutely a more entertaining F1 season than last year. And I was watching last year, but it's still not enough to inspire me to get back to carve out a new habit. Some of that has to be organically, and that can be a wide range of things that you just suddenly you get back into the habit of doing something. So I think with AEW, yes, they're dealing with a high volume of a product that they're putting out. I think at the same time, I think the calling card of, like, you can see, like, they're doing a lot more storytelling, and that's coupled with these big matches that they do. I don't think, like, the big series of matches every single week are necessarily the appeal to AEW like it was 2 to 3 years ago. And, like, for those that are, that will complain about not enough storytelling in AEW, I'm almost at the point, I think there's almost too much. Like, there is so much, and it's a show where there's a lot going on, and I don't like, at its core, I just don't think you have that one transformative performer that's kind of leading things, that is bringing new fans in, that is leading things. Like, you don't have that flagship performer that stood out, even though you have, like, a great roster of talent and there's candidates, but no one is breaking out at the moment.
Did it have that in the first few years?
I think it did in many ways. I think you had it was an ensemble cast, but I think, like, the Young Bucks coming out was always a big segment. Moxley, I think Jericho was a lot hotter. I think you had the combination, it felt like the cooler product. It felt like this was an improved version of professional wrestling on national TV. That was something you're not getting elsewhere.
Yeah. So maybe to answer my first question, am I suffering from AEW fatigue? I think it's tough to answer because like you said, John, I still look forward to Dynamite. And I think when I look at my enjoyment of Dynamite after every viewing, I feel like it's pretty consistent. It's been pretty consistent throughout all these years. When I look at an episode of Dynamite now versus an episode of Dynamite, or at least what my memories of an episode of Dynamite from like 4 years ago, I don't think there's that much difference in my enjoyment of the show. In fact, like in many ways, I think I might enjoy Dynamite now more than just the quality of show maybe it was back then. The difference is that was the best show of the week in wrestling back then. The Dynamite I see now is in many weeks not the best show that's currently on air for professional wrestling. There was a freshness to that episode or to AEW at that time where you had the perception that you were experiencing the best quality that professional wrestling had to offer. Now with the WWE, I think being so successful in creating new characters, telling successful stories, and creating, I would consider, a more cohesive product, AEW feels like it's a lower quality show in comparison to WWE. And that perception, I think, has certainly hurt it, especially when you're trying to be the alternative brand. The only thing you really have is, if your reach is not as big as the WWE's, the only thing you really have is that you are a better quality, a product. And to lose that is very difficult for AEW. So I think what AEW needs to be now needs to be different than what it was 4 years ago. It can't simply just continue to do the same thing that it has had. It needs to evolve. It needs to continue to find those ways that makes it feel like a more premium quality item than what the WWE is producing. And it needs to find out what that is, because I think at the moment they're looking for a lot of different things that might separate them from a WWE. In some ways, they're trying to mimic what the WWE is doing. And it's a very difficult question to answer, because I think there's so many different ways they can go, but they'd have to hone in on that one thing, or at least like have that one big calling card to tell the audience that you should choose our show because we do this better than that, and that's why you should choose us.
Would you like, if we were talking in terms of a sports team that was having similar issues, and we wouldn't say like this is a let's say formerly a playoff team, championship level, and now they're struggling for a playoff spot. They haven't bottomed out. They're not like tanking, but it's like it's a drop off. It's a lot easier in sports, rather than assessing this player or this defensive play or this strategy. It falls on the coach. Like, that is the easiest remedy to inspire change and to show your public that we are actively trying to improve things. The coach in this case is a Tony Khan. And do you feel, not whether it's realistic that he would remove himself from that creative direction, but do you think AEW is at such a point now that a difference in creative direction is needed? Are we not there yet? Like, where is the thought in terms of a different creative vision for AEW for the next 3 years of this contract?
So I think maybe the one word answer to that question is yes. But maybe beyond just having like a change in creative, I think I don't ever see Tony Khan removing himself from the position. I don't necessarily think he needs to. Tony being in charge offers just a lot of incredible benefits to a big time professional wrestling corporate promotion that we haven't seen in any sort of competitor, in many years. The fact that he is the type of fan that he is, the type of fan that cares about maybe public perception the way he does, I think is a huge benefit. You can argue he cares about it too much, but I think I'd rather a Tony Khan than somebody like a Dixie Carter, who like didn't really pay any sort of attention to that sort of like public outcry to bringing in a Bischoff or a Vince Russo or something like that. So I think it's a huge positive. I think though what Tony's issue, to me at least right now, is there's a cohesiveness and a leadership that is missing from this promotion, both in terms of like what stories we hear about like how this roster is managed, to I think what the on-screen product tells you. Trying to convey a story like this Jon Moxley, Death Riders takeover storyline requires a great deal of coordination and having everybody on board, so that their individual stories don't just feel like an island and everybody's responding to the actions of the Death Riders, for instance. And that's just not the type of like cohesiveness that I think I'm seeing from this sort of like production that requires, I think, more substantial leadership that can like oversee everything. So I mean, Tony will always have final say as long as he's in charge, but I think maybe he needs somebody in a role below him, just below him, that can manage all of these things in a way that maybe he's not. If you like this video, consider joining our Patreon, the Post Wrestling Cafe. Multiple bonus podcasts every week, ad-free shows, and access to our full archive. Otherwise, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Thank you for watching.